Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I am Brad Kelly.
And I'm Rebecca Bowker, running for Iowa House District 100.
With all the appropriate branding in place. Okay, this all started when I feel like I received a message over Facebook that if you had somehow become aware that we were opening up the building across the street and had said, if you need any help, let me know. And I was intrigued. I think I love the community that we're in, and there is a lot of community support for things that are positive and going well. And then I think at some point I was like, I'm just going to look this person up to see who it is. Maybe I know them better than I think I do. Let me just go find out who it is. And then I found out you were running. And then you had some events coming up that I was out of town, and I thought, well, it's a little self-serving, but I'm just going to ask the questions that I have. And like at the drop of a hat, you're like, I would love to talk about those things. They're not all relevant to this particular race, but we'll talk anyway. And that really impressed me. And so when you're like, here's my number, let's talk about issues. I thought, what a great opportunity. If you're ready to talk, like, let's, do you want a wider audience? And then like, what was that like on your side? I mean, I don't know how many times you get contacted. Like, what was the experience like on your side in terms of arriving at this place where we're about to talk issues in the Iowa state race?
Sure. Well, I originally reached out because I also sit on the Fort Madison City Council, and I'm a business owner and a building owner here. And so I really, really understand what it's like to start something new, and especially, tackle remodeling projects and everything. So I was just like, I am really, really excited that you guys bought that building, and that was so cool. And so I wanted to reach out and just say, hey, what can I do to help, whether it's on the city level, just a personal level? Do you need somebody to help lay tile? I did all this tiling, by the way.
Oh, man.
Is there anything I can do to help, because I want Fort Madison to be successful, and I want Southeast Iowa to be successful. And so when you reached out with those questions, I was like, hey, yeah, let's talk. I'm really on board with that, and I'm excited to chat with you today.
I love it. My political aspirations go back all the way back to 1992, because the elections in November. So at some point, for really the first time in U.S. history, first time in recent U.S. history, there was a chance for an independent third-party candidate to really take some votes home. And so I helped Ross Perot run for president. That was just a spectacular experience. I went to the Reform Party convention and ended up after, I was obviously the youngest person there when I went. And so, if I'm 43 now, and that was 1992, you can do the math. I was young. And before the convention was over, I was on stage, I was speaking, and I ended up basically from that moment on until the race was over, just put whatever time I had that I wasn't in school or wasn't at work into at least educating people. At the time, there were 6 candidates for president. Green Party had a candidate, Reform Party, obviously, right? Republican, Democrat. There was a lot of people running, and I never remembered that sort of like freedom of choice. And so it was passionate. I was excited. Ross Perot ended up calling after the race was over. My mom was like, she said hello and was like, Brad, the phone's for you, but I really feel like I know this person's voice. It's very distinct. I don't know, but they want to talk to you. Like, it was back in the before caller ID. He certainly wasn't calling my cell phone. And I was like, oh, hey, Mr. Perot. Oh, man, thanks so much for calling. And then my mom just lost it and was like running around in a circle in the kitchen while I was talking to Ross Perot. And it was a really cool experience for him to reach out to me. And so I if I didn't decide up to that point, I decided that day that I was going to do something to make a difference. And your willingness to reach out and just to talk, to give up your time, which I know is super precious. Anyone who's a business owner, anyone who's ever tried to build something from the ground up, time is it's the most expensive thing that you have, and it's always in short supply. So that is kind of where I started. You, to me, give off a huge grassroots vibe. I know you're running on a Democratic ticket, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're on one of the two big parties that it isn't grassroots, so to say. How did you decide to put your hat into the political arena?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned 1992 because that is the year I graduated high school. And there was the first opportunity to vote in an election, and I voted for Bill Clinton.
It happens.
It happens.
He did win.
So all my life I've been involved in civic organizations, and I volunteer my time and everything. But it's only been recently that I've been interested in partisan politics. And I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of misinformation that is out there. Back in the day when they were just talking about, whether to spend or tax or, those types of issues, they didn't inspire me. They didn't, they didn't cause me to do anything. But now when freedoms are at stake and misinformation is running rampant, I feel like we need to bring candidates into the mix that are going to run an honest, open campaign. I'm not going to spread misinformation, and we're just going to talk to the voters. And honestly, a lot of the stuff that I have learned in the last, 10 months has been based on what people have told me and said, hey, these are the issues that are important to me. So that is just really the motivation. And, I don't have young children at home anymore. So, I said, hey, let's do this.
Okay.
Let's do this.
Priscilla, hi. Did not want to ignore you. You popped on right when I was in the middle of something. So Priscilla, welcome. Everyone else who's out there, we see it gives us a little eyeball count for who's watching at that second. But we know that we're streaming across 4 platforms. So I know many of you are all over there across America and hopefully tons in the great state of Iowa. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have questions, this is a live format. So please, if you have a specific question, feel free to post it in the comments. We will see that across Facebook, across YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So please don't hesitate to post those questions down below, and then we'll get to you. Was there a moment at all in which I would imagine your kind of political uneasiness grew over the years? Was there a moment at which you're like, I just can't, this is the thing, I can't sit and watch anymore. I have to participate.
Well, January 6th was a pretty big deal for everybody. And so that was pretty important. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the last few years and on a national level that was really, really upsetting. I don't like the disrespect, and you can hear the trains in the background.
I love that
we're on the riverfront right now.
It's my favorite part of living in
So, hey, shout out to the 2-man crew effort. But anyway, so there's been a lot of things that have happened on the national platform that have just really upset me. I don't like the level of acceptance of disrespect.
Yeah.
And for women, for people of color, and for disabled folks, as well as the LGBTQ community. And that has just been running rampant lately. And it's just frankly unacceptable to me. So, hey, I'm willing to stand up against that. And I don't have a problem doing that.
Okay. Did you go register? How long between January 6th and when you registered to run for office?
I registered, I want to say March. It's this last.
I'm sure it's a blur.
It's been a blur. It's been a blur, but
sometime in spring.
Yes.
Okay.
It was pretty early, but it's important, and so. Yeah.
Have there been some really cool moments where you meet a constituent, you have a conversation, and you walk away thinking you are why I'm running?
Absolutely. So I was talking to somebody who is disabled recently, and they were really upset about the disparagement and the rolling back of benefits, cuts to Medicaid, difficulty in prescription drugs. And I was like, I need to stand up for this person. And I think that this is important to me, let alone all of the other issues that hopefully we'll talk about tonight. So
fantastic. There was a laundry list that I sent over, some of which are like 10,000 foot views, and some of them are obviously quite a bit more important. You mentioned healthcare benefits specifically. I was frankly shocked and overjoyed to find out when we moved to the great state of Iowa. When we did so, we were destitute. We had lost essentially everything. They had shut down live events. That's 100%, maybe 99.2% of what Color World did was live events. And I remembered thinking when they sent my team home, they canceled Emerald City, which was the show I personally was going to do. And then I remember I got a phone call from Jamie, and she said, they've told us to pack up and go home. And it was March of 2020. And obviously, you talk about misinformation. The rumors of what SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, it was everywhere. And everybody thought any interaction with another person was going to end in their death. We were afraid of each other. We were staying in our homes. We weren't going out. Like, it was a crazy time. But I remember thinking, like, this will not end. It won't end in 2020. It probably won't end in 2021. And so we moved to Iowa. We were pretty sure we would qualify for benefits at that state. We used the money from the sale of the house to live off of. And we were shocked to find how reasonable the limits are. So for anyone who's never applied for help, man, I hope you never have to. But if you do, and there are plenty who have, you find out that some people make the cut and some people don't. In the state of North Carolina, if you made more than $700 a month, no assistance.
Oh, wow. That is crazy.
So I had been without health insurance for quite a while because I made more than 700. But with 4 kids, I didn't make that much. And when you start talking about putting a family of 6 and paying out of pocket for health insurance, $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200, depends on the state that you live in. And I was so grateful when we arrived in the state of Iowa. And so we had somebody living with us who I couldn't claim as a dependent. She ended up getting a job at Walmart, and right off the bat, you can have health insurance. I think it's either 3 or 6 months. It's a pretty quick window with Walmart. They are great to work for. In fact, you probably know a lot of people go to work for Walmart to get the health insurance because it is so good. But it was before that window. Mm-hmm. And so we encouraged her to apply with the state of Iowa, and it came back. I think it was like under $29,000 for an individual, and you could qualify to have assistance on your health. And I never had that. In California, they have some pretty cool 50-50 programs, but the limits they're pretty low. Like for a family, 29.
Sure, and I hear what you're saying, Brad, but you are a unique case because you do have a family of 6. A lot of Iowans have 1 or 2, and it is the thresholds because you have more dependents.
Yeah, tell me.
Thresholds are a lot lower. Now, if you have fewer children, which a lot of Iowans do, 6 is a little unusual in this day and age. Great that you did, and I met your daughter. Your daughter was just awesome, and I was super impressed with her. But
yeah, what does that look like for a family of 4?
Well, and I don't know the numbers right off the top of my head, but what I do know is that the cuts, Iowa has never really embraced the the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
And so because there are different plans, like through Farm Bureau and some other places, there's a lot of limits on those where you can't have pre-existing conditions. And it makes it more difficult for those smaller families to qualify for affordable care. Now, high deductible plans are out there, and that's great. But if you have a pre-existing condition, say as diabetes or something that costs a lot of money, that can be really, really problematic for those small families. So I'm happy and I'm thrilled that Iowa has embraced you and made it easy for your family. But unfortunately, not all families are able to in partake in reasonable health care.
What can be done at that, right? Four's a pretty average American household, right?
Mhm.
Two kids, two parents. What can be done? What's realistic? I think is probably the first question to ask, because everybody wants to promise the sky, but the reality is when you show up at the state house, you're one of how many representatives?
100.
Okay. And we are District 100, right?
Yes,
I'm,
we are.
I'm guessing they're numbered like this.
Yes.
Since we're in the bottom right-hand corner,
Yeah.
we're number 100. So there's 99 other people in the room. How do you, thinking about your job, when right, race is over, you go, you sit down in a room full of 100 people that represent the 100 different districts. Where do you start? What does that battle look like? Do you feel like there's other like-minded people in the room? Like, health insurance is such a big deal in 2022 and beyond.
Sure. So I think what we really need to do is take a step back, because I don't think it should not be a partisan issue. It shouldn't be a Democrat Republican issue.
For sure.
It should be everybody's issue, right? Yeah. And so, well, number one, I'm hoping that there's steps taken on a federal level to solve the healthcare crisis, if you will, across the country. But at an Iowa level, the first step we need to do is we need to introduce legislation to bring in additional carriers and vendors to sell the Affordable Care Act policies. So they have really restricted those.
Okay.
And
okay.
So we need to look at that. And then if you look at the group of the population that qualifies for Medicare and Medicaid,
yep,
we need to look at the way we're funding those programs as well. Privatization of Medicaid has really been a problem. They have, started canceling and denying claims over 681% higher than they were several years ago. So if you're going to the hospital and you're trying to get help, 681% higher denial, that's just unacceptable. So we need to get rid of the privatization of Medicaid and Medicare, and we need to look at how we're managing those programs, because there's a lot of low income Iowans that qualify and are elderly and are disabled. We need to take care of those people.
For sure. Are those limits, is the Iowa State House, is that something that can be done in terms of the limits where you qualify to have assistance from the state of Iowa?
There are things that we can do with funding mechanisms, yes.
Okay.
And without getting into a lot of that complicated stuff, but there are steps that the state legislature can take in order to expand our coverage and make it more affordable for people.
Yeah, I think the idea of the high deductible health plan is obviously like a stopgap, but there's honestly no reason that the state couldn't offer, right? If we take a look at the reality of the situation, you go in with no insurance, someone else is going to pay the bill anyway. Right. It's either going to end up through bankruptcy, or it's going to end up where that person isn't essentially responsible anyway. And so if that's the case, it seems to reason that you would just go down that road. Right. Man, what a medical bankruptcy. Probably, I don't even know if I can think of a worse bankruptcy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you imagine having cancer or some major healthcare issue, and then you can't even afford to get care?
Right.
And it's really unfortunate that the number of people who are lower income that face those healthcare challenges are dying at a higher rate than the people who maybe have access. Who have access or who can afford to pay for their own care.
Yep. No, I feel you. It's a big deal. We're in our company, we're not to the point where I can provide that as an employer, and it leaves each of us on their own. And you're in a situation where a single person has to decide, do I make more money but then have to pay out of pocket? I feel like we need to get past asking those kinds of questions of ourselves. Like decisions, like I had said earlier, so many people literally will get a job at Walmart because of how robust the healthcare is. We really should detach healthcare from work.
And I absolutely agree. And I hope they do that on a federal level. We are one of the only civilized, well, I shouldn't say civilized, first world country, whatever
Correct.
you want to say,
Yeah.
in the world
Yes.
that does not
That's
provide
right.
health care
Yeah.
for our people.
Yeah.
And, that goes with education too, if you want to go down that road. Other countries, successful countries, provide education at least the first 2 years. And it's just really unfortunate that us as a country, we're so far behind because of private interests and the almighty dollar.
So I love Esther's question or kind of comment that leads to me for a question. Are there like those traditional political ads being run in your state house race?
Yes.
Oh, is that has to be, how do you resist going down that road and fighting fire with fire? Like that has to be, I would think that would be hard to know that something is out there and then not, how do you?
Well, two things. So early on in the campaign, I was up in Des Moines and my opponent happened to be at the same event. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, I'm going to run against you.
Yeah.
But I plan on running a clean campaign. I sure hope you agree. We shook hands and we walked away. And obviously he didn't keep his end of the bargain, or at least what I interpreted his end of the bargain.
Sure.
But I'm not going to stoop to that level, because at the end of the day, Iowans and the rest of the country are really, really tired, and they're sick and tired of these negative campaigns and misinformation. So let's just focus on the issues. Let's just talk about what's important and stop with this misinformation. And frankly, as an elected official, my opponent should be a leader. And the fact that he is promoting misinformation and being dishonest is just really disappointing. And I think the voters in Southeast Iowa recognize that, or at least I hope they do and understand that. So.
Well, hopefully, tonight goes a long way to really dispel anything that's not out there. I was impressed that I've done interviews before where I always offer if they want questions up front. And you, at no point have you said, what are we going to talk about? What are the topics? And I think that's spectacular.
Well, and I hear you. So one of the things that I have done in the last 10 months is that if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you, hey, I don't have that information, but let me research it. Let me talk to the subject matter experts. Let me get the data.
Yeah.
I'm a huge data person. I want to make data informed decisions. I just don't want to listen to the vocal misinformation.
Yeah.
Let's see what the research says. Let's see what the data says. Let's make an informed decision moving forward. So if I don't know something, I'm going to tell you, hey, I don't have that information, or I don't know that. So
I love it. I honestly will take somebody who's honest and willing to work over any other option. I think if you have those two things, you're ready to work, and you're ready to admit when you don't know what you don't know, but you're ready to go to work on it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never shied away from hard work. I've been working literally since I've been 15 years old. And I moved out when I was 16, and I've been on my own ever since then.
For a minute.
Yeah, I went to high school. I probably made a few bad decisions in high school, but hopefully nobody from my high school is online right now. But I worked. I worked in the morning. I worked at a country kitchen from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m.
That's cool.
Went to high school. Then I worked at the bar rush at night. And
I love it.
I paid for my own apartment.
Yeah.
I lived my life. And I then ended up having my first son, Adam, who, shout out to him. He is the reason I started making better decisions. And
that's cool.
And here we are. He's going to be 29 on the 29th. So that's exciting.
Yeah, very cool. I think you're in a similar boat of people that made choices in high school that you may go back. I'm on that list. Environmental concerns. I love where we live. I am not informed as to the health of the Mississippi River on the banks. I do love and adore that in Fort Madison, you drive straight up the hill, and anybody can just drive up and recycle all their cardboard, all their plastic, all their glass, and it's essentially a 24-hour thing. So it's as convenient as can be. Is that unique to where we live in Iowa. Like I love how easy it is to recycle things in this community. I love how affordable taking your own trash is to the other day I brought some brush that we had chopped down in my backyard, and they're like, oh, it doesn't reach a certain size. Just go on back there and put that in that bin right there. Am I living on cloud nine? Are there other experiences in the district? Like, what does it look like in our area? Are things as good as they seem from my rose-colored glasses? What is the state of the environment? Like 95% of Iowa's farmland. So.
Okay, so that's a huge topic. So let's just be,
start wherever you want.
Yeah, at a local level, the city of Fort Madison can do better. And
okay.
I'm on the city council. I've been very vocal about this. We have recycling stuff that you can take. We need to do a better job of promoting recycling and reducing the amount of stuff that's going into the landfill. Like I mentioned, I grew up in or maybe I did mention this, I don't know. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and it was huge back then. I mean, we're talking 1993, 94, and they were making you recycle your bottles and your cans and everything separately back then. Now we're not doing quite as good of a job. So Iowa can do better on this recycling. We have made a lot of strides in solar. If you might not have noticed when you pulled up personally.
Oh, I definitely.
There are 240 solar panels on this building
that way.
Now. Yep. And so personally, I take the environment very seriously. The recycle bins on the back of my building, I personally, I have some help too, take up to the recycling every time. Now, on a statewide level, we do have issues in our waterways. Because of the farm ground and agricultural, a lot of nitrates run into our rivers, which cause some problems. So environment is a big thing. We've lost a lot of native grasslands. So we do need to focus some efforts in that direction. I don't feel like the majority of Iowans are against that, though. So I don't think that there's going to be a lot of pushback. Fantastic. But we do need to move it a little more aggressive forward, because we have one Earth, one planet. Yeah. We don't get a redo. So we really need to take the steps we need to do as soon as we can.
So being a person of data, are there things that we can do with all that 95% being farmland to mitigate those nitrates running into the water system? Are there either post or pre?
There are, and again, I'm not an expert in this particular subject, but what I understand is some of that has to do with the boundaries and the amount of land between the waterway and the actual crops themselves. Yeah. So we need to develop some additional programs to incentivize farmers to not plant so close to the waterways. And if we have to pay to, certain crop rows in order for them to not do that, so we reduce that runoff, that's probably worth the investment. I don't know what those numbers look like or anything at this point, but I know that those are little steps that we can do to help the environment.
No, I think that, without having thought of myself, what would I do? I love that. It's simple, but if you separate the distance from where the fertilizer is being applied to where it ends up, nature will take care of the rest. Are there state subsidies for farming in Iowa?
Yes. And again, not an expert in this particular topic, but I do understand that there are. And John Norwood, who is running for the Secretary of Agriculture, is a lot more informed. And I've listened to him speak several times. And so I'm trying to pull some knowledge from him. And he's got some really great ideas on how to help the environment, encourage positive production of farmland. And so I plan on learning as much as I can from him.
Is there a way to get crops to be real priced? Subsidies play such a huge part of the price of produce. Are there things that we can do in the state of, because of how the subsidies operate, the mode and method of how people farm is heavily influenced. Like in wanting to steer things in a direction, it has gone in that direction. But we're at a point now where sustainability has arrived on scene, and we're kind of all thinking about, okay, now that we're here, how do we get into a better place? Are there things that we can do that both encourage farming and maybe even encourage more people to go into that, in which we can do it in a more sustainable way?
And I don't know the intricacies
Sure.
of this conversation, but what I do understand is the problem is that it's too expensive for small farmers, new farmers, people moving in that want to develop a farm. And there's a lot of large farms that gobble up the smaller ones. So it makes it more difficult to go back.
Yep.
You know, you go back 50 years, 40 years, all you had was mom and pops, you
Right.
know, and they built this country. And unfortunately, land prices and different things are very expensive. So I know that John is working on some programs and some plans to help move that forward and make it more affordable for your smaller farmers to get back into the market. Egg ground right now is, and it has been for several years, very, very expensive per acre. So I can imagine the challenges that people face to try to get back into the
So
market.
it's like $7,500 an acre.
Oh, yeah. See, there you go.
And I know that because we accidentally bought a farm.
How do you accidentally buy a farm?
Okay. New to this. So in other states, the auction environment is nowhere near as robust as it is in Iowa. It's one of my favorite things about Iowa is you think about, Frazee Auction and Real Estate is certainly a big name here in Southeast Iowa, but there are other companies that do that. And tons for farmland. My wife grew up on a farm, has, big dreams of having a piece of land where kids can run around and be kids and drive things with wheels on them and right over the river and through the woods.
Yep.
And so she found a piece of land, fell in love. There's a river that runs right through the property, and did not read the multiplier. So $7,500, great price. It was ended up going for, really good. In other states, just so you know, an acre of land for $7,000 is, people would die to have those kinds of prices in other states. We came from North Carolina. It is many times more than that, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for an acre versus $7,000, right? So Iowa's a great state to be in, raise a family. And so didn't understand the multiplier, called, but to ask questions, but didn't even know the right question to ask. And then the way the bidding system works is you put in your max bid. And so she put in, this is how much for the whole lot that I'd be willing to pay, and didn't understand. Yes. So now you can see that number that she was willing to pay was all of it, not multiplied by like 50 acres.
Oops.
So she won, and then we had to find out how that all works. And so it was actually a really neat experience. And there are a ton of programs for women farmers, first-time farmers. And I feel like that would be a really cool thing to put into the hands and minds of young people growing up in Iowa. I feel like education is the opportunity that's in front of us to really make becoming a farmer easier, less stigmatized to our young people. We desperately need farmers, plumbers, electricians, mechanics, and the traditional 4-year education doesn't lend itself to those career paths that we desperately need in our country and in Iowa.
And I absolutely agree. And not necessarily to expand a little bit on that, maybe not necessarily just on the farming track, but you mentioned the plumbers and the HVAC and the electricians. So I've been working with all of the unions in Southeast Iowa, and they are absolutely fabulous. And they got these really great apprenticeship programs. And so you're absolutely right. And so we have another venue down in Montrose that Lee County Economic Development has been building on. So they have a career education center. So they're going to focus on the trades and maybe some non-traditional, but non-college, 4-year college-based plans. And so that is really exciting because at the end of the day, Iowa is built with working families. Not everybody's going to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer or whatever. I mean, we need those professions and good for them. But at the end of the day, we need the trades. We need people to build our roads and wire our houses and plumb in all of these different things. So apprenticeship programs are very, very important. And I think there is more emphasis now. And at least when I speak to people, we're talking about apprenticeship programs and we're talking about the value of that, because you have a job. They're going to pay for your education.
Yeah.
They're going to provide you that hand-on experience. And nothing against four-year education. My youngest son, he's a senior at University of Iowa. Go Hawkeyes. Nothing against Iowa State for those people who are listening. But anyway, I had to plug that in there. But yeah, he's a senior. He is going to be an actuary. So
yes,
good for him.
Yeah.
And so there's a trade and there's a method and a path for everybody. We just have to educate our students, our high school students, even maybe starting in middle school, saying, hey, these are the options that are out there. You don't have to be a doctor. You can earn a really good living being other things.
I feel like no one ever on career day goes to the table to be like an insurance adjuster. But if you've ever had a claim, you're at the end of the line. Mm-hmm. Try calling a plumber to see how quickly they can come over to help you with your plumbing issue.
Well, I have to shout out to my plumber, Ken. If I text him, he usually comes. So Ken's Plumbing and Heating. Hey, there's definitely a shortage of the trades, and to try to get skilled workers to do that. So yeah, we need to recruit.
I definitely feel like it has to start as early as we possibly can. I think if we wait till high school, they already have grown up thinking and hearing those things. When you start talking in elementary school about, what do I want to be when I grow up? I think if we don't educate young people, then they will take that option off the table for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so what goes along with that conversation, though, about educating young people is, and people know I'm going to go on this conversation, is that we have to fully fund public education, right? We have to provide the schools with the resources, because right now the teachers are overworked and they're stressed. They are doing a good job, but they have to keep up with the math and science and reading. We don't have the resources right now to say, hey, students, in addition to that, listen to what your career paths could be. Listen to what you could do. We need to make sure that the schools have the resources to go down those other paths, maybe to have these different opportunities in their schools, but they've had to cut back programs. They've cut back the music programs. They've cut back the trade programs. We need to make sure that they have the funding to go down those avenues.
What specific tax pays the teacher's salary?
School education budgets are extremely complicated, and I am not going to pretend to know the 12 different categories that they get their various funding from. It is very complicated, but what I do know is that there's a student supplemental aid percentage or amount that the schools get from the state of Iowa.
Okay.
And they get property taxes and they get some other different little things in there. But that percentage, right now, the past legislature gave them like 2.6%. Okay, that doesn't even keep up with inflation. So what has happened in the last, 10 years or whatever it's been, they've barely kept up with inflation. Well, we know that inflation's been higher than that. We know in order to compete with other states for educators, we have to pay them more. We have to be able to provide them 4 or 5% at least, so they can say, hey, teacher, come and work for Iowa. We're going to be able to start your salary at X amount of dollars.
Yep.
Our teachers are really underpaid. It's just really unfortunate. And every time we underpay them and then we turn around and disrespect them by trying to put cameras in classrooms, it's just really disparaging. And I just hope that teachers that are in Iowa stay in Iowa to make sure that, and hopefully we can turn it around so you guys understand how much we do respect you.
Is there so Iowa's, at least the combined sales tax rate in Fort Madison, and I would imagine it's pretty similar statewide, is 7%. is there a stomach for, a taste for a tax that specifically funds teacher salaries and nothing else? And could we do it, and would it be safe? Meaning, there's always when money is collected by a governmental organization, I will be the first one to say, I think the government is a horrible allocator of capital. I grew up running my own investment advisory firm, and I would if I had a choice between giving my money to a government and giving my money to a well-run corporation, I would choose the corporation. Yeah. Is there a way to, because you're right. When I saw what I was going to make in North Carolina, so I would my first bachelor's degree is secondary education with a DFA in biology. And when they told me what I was going to make as a first-year teacher in the state of North Carolina, I'm out. I never entered the classroom after my student teaching. I had 2 more bachelor's degrees, and I've done everything in my life except use my degree. And that what you get paid has terrified me ever since. Is there a way to essentially raise the money to pay teachers what they need to be paid? Because it needs to be one of the most high-paying jobs, because all of our kids' futures
depend on that. Yeah, absolutely. So multiple components to that. First of all, the state is boasting a $1.9 billion surplus. We have the money to pay public education.
We do some
right
quick
now.
math. Seems like there's money available.
Yeah, I think there's money available, but instead we're giving it to large corporations. And I hear what you're saying. They're important to the economy, but they need to pay their fair share. And frankly, me, as my income level is paying more proportionately for taxes than what large corporations are. So taking that conversation aside, now I do not support an additional sales tax to do that. And the reason is it disproportionately affects the poor for income wise, right? So you have, if you're making 20,000 and you're taxing an additional person or amount of money on whatever that is, the sales tax on something, you're disproportionately affecting them. So I don't think sales tax or any type of use tax is appropriate to fund education. The state has the money, we need to spend it. Now, here's another little avenue, and you and I really haven't spoken before, so I don't know what your belief system is.
I know this is totally scary for both of us.
Yeah, but I frankly think that we should legalize cannabis in the state of Iowa and tax it. Now, I'm not saying
death.
I don't think it's going to fully fund public education, but maybe it could supplement. Maybe it could fund different programs through education. AEA, the area education agencies, have been drastically underfunded this last legislative season, and which is affecting the mental health care and care to students with disabilities. So maybe that's what it goes to. Maybe it goes to roads, maybe it goes to infrastructure or whatever, but it is a tax. It is a use tax, but it's a tax that's completely voluntary. And just like the cigarettes and alcohol, I mean, if you don't have to buy it. So if you're going to buy it, you pay the tax, and that tax can benefit Iowans.
So I love that you just had that light bulb come on, that you can say no. So a sales tax that doesn't touch food doesn't disproportionately affect. In fact, a sales tax that is excluded from, if food is excluded from, disproportionately goes after those that have the available budget to spend, which is who we'd like to ask to help out more anyway. Right. So if you think about, like, if you don't like a certain tax, I love your view is exactly mine. If you don't like a certain tax, then don't do the thing that incurs that tax.
Correct.
So my side on the marijuana comes in that those people that are incarcerated, a disproportionate amount of them, over 50%, are for marijuana related crimes. We have better things to do with our time than feed people, incarcerate people, pay for them to live, all of their living expenses for something that people are clearly going to do anyway. So I'm going to both say that no one should ever smoke marijuana. No one should drink alcohol. No one should smoke cigarettes. The data's in, folks, and all of those things will kill you. If you are going to, right, there are some consequences health-wise and financial-wise, meaning the taxes on those things are astronomical. It is to dissuade you from participating. But if you are going to, that cost that you're going to create, right, because someone who smokes for a long time, someone who drinks for a long time will end up in our healthcare system.
Correct.
So we're kind of pre-funding that expense that's coming up. So I am for police spending their time on better things. Marijuana does not have the sort of negative, detrimental things that other drugs do.
Correct. And I agree, absolutely. I work at the prison as my day job. I'm very familiar with the correction data, and it costs like a 90 average statewide. The ISP is higher, but minimum security is lower. About $90 a day to incarcerate somebody. And I get there's a population of individuals that need to be incarcerated.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But there are people who we don't probably need to be spending $90 a day incarcerating, and, you know, the minor drug crimes and things like that. Absolutely. So it's a cost to the taxpayers, and what the United States is the number one
in the world. Most incarcerated population.
Yes, 1 in 5 Americans have been incarcerated or under some type of supervision in their lifetime. 1 in 5. That's just astronomical. And, you know, we don't necessarily need to get into all of, you know, the different aspects of that. But there's restorative justice programs that other countries have embraced that maybe America can.
Can we spend $90 a day on that?
That would be awesome.
I don't think you'd have to pay it for nearly the time of their sentence. If we would, and just so everyone, this is not a plan. We literally have never exchanged more than maybe 10 words. Do you want to set this up? Yes, I do. Are you willing to talk? Yes, right. That's been the extent of our conversation. And so the fact that we're on, I mean, it's obviously thrilling to me to find out we're on the same page as that. But you know, please don't feel like this is set up to just like make Rebecca look amazing. I legitimately, I have a vote to cast in November or sooner if I can get my butt to early voting.
Get your butt to early
voting. Can you once again please remind me and everyone else where and when you can early vote?
So early voting started October 19th, and you can just go right down the street, literally the 900 block here of Avenue H, and go into the auditor's office. And I believe they're open until 4:30 every day. Go in there, cast your vote, get it done with, just in case, you know, it snows or something. You never know what's going to happen.
Is there an address or anything?
Oh, geez.
Because I know to me, when you say 900 block of it, I'm like, what? 900
it's the
block
only building on 900 block of Avenue H. It's.
Is it the big government building that
Yes.
faces the waterfront?
It sure is.
Okay.
It definitely is. And I'm sorry, I don't know what that address is off the top of my head.
I'm going to try to look it up while we're here.
Okay, good.
Because we're close now.
Yes, I'm half a block away.
So if I use my map app and go in far enough, I can. Okay, is that the building?
That sure looks like it.
Okay.
There's that address there.
Okay, if you will go to 933 Avenue H from the hours of,
I think it's 8 to 4:30.
So let's conservatively say 9 to 4 from 9 to Monday through Friday.
Yes.
Do you have to do anything in preparation for that?
Make sure you bring a voter ID.
Okay.
And if you're not registered to vote, you can vote. You can register at that time. You just bring your ID, register to vote. You can cast your ballot. It's really super simple, and the folks down at the auditor's office are super helpful.
Okay. A lot of people have moved to this area recently. What if you have an out-of-state driver's license and you want to participate in the political process?
You need to bring proof of your current residence.
Okay.
So whether that's electric bills or you know utility bills or something, you need to bring proof of your current residence in some form.
Okay. And what if you have lost your voter registration card, but you still want to vote?
You just need you need your driver's license or some form of government
Okay,
ID.
sure.
And
okay.
Yeah, you don't need a voter registration card. You just need your driver's license or, you know, some form of ID. You can get a
Ashley, you are so clutch. I'm going to put this on screen just so those that are re-watching this and missed it, 9:30. Thank you, Ashley. That makes my life so much easier. Thank you so much.
Ashley, can you look up the voting hours too?
Oh, if anybody wants to be helpful during this, thank you so much. Wendy, thank you very much. I appreciate your I would imagine Rebecca took it very seriously from March-ish when you registered to run till now. What has the process been like so obviously it starts with the passion. You got fired up. Things did not go the way that you wanted to. Tired of seeing them go that way. Where do you start?
Oh gosh, that's a huge question there. So where do you start? Well, I started with my local Democratic Party.
Okay.
And I said, hey, Mary Jo, what's going on here? And she said, well, you got to get up to the Capitol and I have to register. And so I went first, had to go get some signatures on a petition and got those and went up to the Capitol, and there's a picture on my Facebook page, and had all that taken care of. And it was a little scary, a little intimidating because again, this is a big
First
deal.
time?
Yeah, this is a pretty big deal. And city council was a big deal too, but this is just, it's just bigger.
A little bigger.
And there's more at stake. And
yeah.
And frankly, the attacks, I've had some very bad things said to me, but hey, I'm a big girl. I can take it, but I'm not going to stoop to that level.
I feel so in sports, we just settle it on the field, right? Or the court or what. Is there not just some way to just settle it at the polling booth?
Well, you bring up sports. It's interesting because I was a soccer referee for 12 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about being a soccer referee is even when I'm wrong, I'm right. And I have the whistle and you can sit down. And so that was always fun. Coaches didn't always like that, but
yeah, seriously.
Hey, here's my whistle. And so what I'm hoping to do in this campaign is very similar to that. Hey, I feel that our platform, my belief systems, are the Iowa belief systems, public education, healthcare, mental health care. All of these different topics are really, really super important to Iowans. And so I'm wrong, or I'm right, they're wrong. Here's my whistle. I need my whistle. But anyway, yeah, so I was, I can handle it.
So how do you choose where you're going to start getting educated?
Oh gosh. So I took several, I spend anywhere from 2 to 6 hours on my campaign a day. And some of that is just reading. I'm reading up on the topics, I'm researching, I'm, verifying facts. I have a little book over there on the counter that I have little tabs on, in every single subject that you could think of, I have data on. And so I want to make sure that I'm informed. I don't want to just do broad political statements because that's not what Iowans want to hear. That's not what voters want to hear.
I was going to say, I don't think it applies to just Iowa. I think all of us would be happy to just.
Yeah, let's talk about the real issues, not these broad generalizations. And so thank you, Ashley, for doing that. Appreciate it.
Ashley, I don't know you personally, but I love you.
We all love Ashley. So I did a lot of research. I talked to people. And I've always been really involved in my community. In fact, little promotion here for the domestic violence program here in Southeast Iowa. On Monday at Fairway from 1 to 3, I'm going to be collecting donations. So come in, bring something, drop it in the basket for them. It's a really good program. I've been involved with them for over 25 years. I've been involved. I donate to the food pantry. I've just been involved in a lot of different things in the community. And so I've already know people and talk to people a lot. And so I just capitalized on that and made those relationships and kept myself present. And that's really all I've done. I haven't had to just make myself present during, the election.
Sure.
Like some people have.
We're going to keep it.
Yep.
Speaking of volunteer opportunities, I just saw the other day at my church, there was a box I feel like it was meant for high school students, and they were looking for personal hygiene items for are there certain things going on right now that those that are watching who not only, we would like all of you to vote, regardless of where you fit on the political spectrum, we would please like you to use that right that a lot of people died for. Mm-hmm. do your research, please. Don't vote by color,
Mhm.
skin, or red or blue. Do your research, but everyone needs to vote. So in addition to voting, which I think will make the world a better place, are there things going on right now that, you mentioned one, it's next week, you said?
Monday, the 31st.
Okay, Monday the
Yep.
31st at the Fairway grocery store?
Yep, Fort Madison Fairway.
Okay, are there other things that you're aware of that, like, what part does the Salvation Army play in the city of Fort Madison? Are there other organizations that I know we just did the end of the month meal
Mhm.
at the church that's
Up there?
on the corner of Central Park?
Yeah, on Central Park on 10th Street and Avenue E. Yep.
Because there are several churches on the corner.
Yes.
The
10th and E.
Okay, yes, it's definitely the one on E. So on the corner of 10th and E, there is the end of the month meal, which is both great for those who need that and great for those that want to help out. Are there other things that are going on in Fort Madison that people can participate in to feel good about themselves and also to help someone else?
Well, first, I always have to mention the food pantry. So we are going into a special needs season, right?
Okay.
So we have holidays coming up. We have a lot of different things, and families are really going to feel the pinch. So, especially with the high utility bills this winter. So we're going to need to make sure that we're keeping the food pantry fully stocked, and that's over there across from McDonald's.
Okay.
In the Rashid building.
Okay.
And so you can send money, you can
Okay.
drop off food items. Whatever you can afford to do is very appreciated. And then, of course, the domestic violence program, the Salvation Army will take clothing and donations as well as money. Children this time of year, there's some kids who can't afford coats. The school system will take clean or new jackets for children, because sometimes they come to school and not everybody has a warm coat to wear. And so keep that in mind when you're shopping. And there's just so many different things you can do, so many different programs. But those are the ones off the top of my head.
Okay.
That I would encourage
So
you to
across from McDonald at the Ration building
is the food pantry.
Okay. And then where would somebody donate money or coats to?
Central office, the Fort Madison School District Central office down there in, I want to say the 1900 block.
I'm going to look it up like we did last time.
Yes. I want to say like the 1900 block of Avenue L or down there.
I'm
anyway.
almost there. Fort Madison. Okay. 1930 Avenue M as in Michael in Fort Madison. 1930 Avenue M in Fort Madison. Ashley, if you have a chance to type that address in, we will put it on the screen.
So yeah, that's the central office for the school district. And in the past, we have hosted jacket drives and supply drives. And that's where I bring them. That's where I drop them off. They can distribute it to wherever is needed. And to help our kids, because not every family has the resources to provide.
Do you know who does the winter items that show up in Central Park?
Yeah, so there is the Fort Madison Parade, the lighting committee. I don't know if that's the exact name of it, but I know that Tim Gobble is involved in that from the Fort Madison Partners.
Tim's cool.
Yeah. Well, we don't like giving too much credit online.
Oh.
Yeah. Known him for years, so he knows. You can drop off my enchiladas anytime, Tim. But anyway, Moorfield Electric is really involved in that. But Tim at Fort Madison Partners could probably help anybody who maybe wants to participate. They always need volunteers to help fix the lighting, the floats. They also need volunteers to pull them sometimes. So Tim would be a great resource for that.
Okay, so I was actually referring to, I saw hats, coats, and gloves show up in the park around, clipped to the tree, and it made my heart warm and fuzzy, and I think it's amazing.
That is actually a brainchild of some students at the high school.
Okay.
And I don't know what the names are, but I do know that that's where that came from. It was inspired a couple years ago, and they've been, I think, this would be the third year if they continue to do it. So,
yeah. When we first moved here, as I said, we were pretty destitute, and I'm not going to lie that gloves, my little smaller kids size, were redeemed from that tree, and I thought it was like a super cool thing. But we don't know if it's going to go on this year.
Like I said, it's a student-driven
Okay.
grassroots effort. So I'm not aware
I love
of
it.
a, like an official
Yeah, yeah.
permanent group that adopted
Okay.
it. So
All right. To donate to the schools, Ashley is clutch and did put that address together for us. So it is on your screen now if you want to donate to Fort Madison and help students in particular. A really broad issue that's one of those 10,000 square foot issues, but I feel like is a hot button in the middle states. We definitely live in the middle states. Protectionism. And for those that don't understand the term protectionism, it is a term used to describe the fear of a citizen of a particular country having goods and services come in and be sold from a foreign country into our market. And I've mentioned Walmart 20 times already, and so why not do it one more time? And I do so. I worked there for 7 years and know the ins and outs of it pretty darn well, and have fought a lot of the criticism that comes the way of that company. Their shelves provide lower cost items for millions of people across North and South America, and the vast majority of those are made somewhere else. And the kind of fear of imported goods directly correlates to the price you pay at the places most people shop. Dollar General, Family Dollar, Walmart, right? All of those are absolutely chock full of goods that were made somewhere else, imported here, and then sold to you. Where are you at? Where has your study and your thought process taken you in terms of the education Americans need, Iowans need to not do the thing that will hurt? You hear the term people voting against their own best interest.
all the time. Yep. I hear that all the time, and I see it all the time. So, and that's kind of another conversation. What you're referring to, and what people really need to understand is we are a global economy, whether we want to be or not. Everybody's car that they're driving around has parts that were made in another country.
If not the car.
Yeah, if not the car, right? So everything that we do and we buy may have some component, whether like the fabric for the shirt came from somewhere, but it was American made. I do promote obviously union issues and union made items. I think that's very important to support our local workers. However, that is, we need to embrace that everything is exchanged, because everything that we import, we export just as much. So we can't think just like, oh, yeah, Iowans need to stay on their in their little island, and America needs to stay on their island, because what are we going to do with all the exports? Our economy is based on selling to other countries. So as much as we buy, we sell. And that's just the way the economy works. And so we have to get rid of this nationalism. You use the term protectionism. I would say it's nationalism, where some folks, not all, some folks are afraid of embracing the worldview. We want to crawl within ourselves and not embrace that other countries bring us culture, diversity, products, knowledge, education. All of these things we can share on a global level, because we are no longer on an island, and we need to accept that.
Speaking of not being on the island anymore, this country was built on the love and the labor of immigrants. I feel like we have, if they're not legally closed, they are, our hearts essentially have been closed to the idea of and the need for immigration. I was frankly shocked before the borders were shut down north of us. They've since reopened, but in 2020, in 2021, we did shows in Canada. I am first generation American. I am the child of immigrants. My mom was born in England. My dad was born in Canada. They immigrated here. I am the first U.S. born child in my mom's line. She immigrated to Canada from England. And the center of Canada is open for business. And if you go to Manitoba, if you go to Saskatchewan, if you go to right? All of those states north of us in the middle of the country, they are absolutely making it easier for people to immigrate to Canada because of the benefits of immigration.
Yes.
The larger workforce, the not so many help wanted signs. If you, as you drive around, there are help wanted signs all over the place. And the thing you hear over and over again is, I can't get enough help. We've reduced our hours as a business because we don't have the help. We've eliminated this thing because we don't have the help. Your thoughts on what we can do as we live in a state that is, oh man, I just saw this number, 52%, might be 62%. It's one of the two. People in Iowa claim white only as their race, and then it drops to like 12.89% claim black only, and the number of right. These are self-identified statistics where someone has said, I am this race. I would imagine in the center of the country, there is quite a bit of the fear is alive and well of what it means for our state to look different. What do we do to overcome that? To, you cut anybody, the blood is the same, right? You need a heart transplant, the heart is the same. Lungs, livers, you name it. What can we do? I had somebody the other day that asked me, I was having something done at the building, and he said, hey, I just got to warn you that the person that will do this is black. And I was like, why on earth would you ever even say that to my face? And he said, well, it's just been my experience that if I don't say that up front, people are shocked or disturbed. And that saddens my heart. That in 2022, you have to warn somebody that will come in and work for you will not look like you. Are there things that we can do? Where's the appropriate place to do that, to cross that bridge?
Okay, well, first, I think I'm going to correct your data there.
Please do.
Yeah. So Iowa actually represents now, there might be on like the actual data census thing, but it's 95% white and 4% black, and I think 1 or 2% Hispanic. Those numbers, and I run those because I compare them to the prison population. Oh no,
I was shocked and I need to find out where I get a lot of stuff comes in the mail, and where they're asking us for like Bureau of Labor statistics and stuff like that. So it may be a particular cross section of.
There might be multiple things there, but to address your point.
So it's even more severe than I first stated.
Yes, it absolutely is very severe. And when you compare it to the prison population, that's a whole other conversation. But what we need to do is, number one, get rid of the misinformation. So you talk about borders, and surprisingly, nobody in the country has a problem with the northern border. It's only the southern border that people have an issue with. And I bring that point up every once in a while in spirited conversation, because when they're saying, well, which border are you going to close? It like, oh, the one with Canada? I mean, do we need to stop those Canadians from coming down? What is wrong
with all the moose?
What's going on up there, right? But that's never the border people are talking about. People are talking about the southern border. And coincidentally or not, it just happens to be people of color. And unfortunately, those people are fleeing violence and poverty and drought and all of these other tragedies in Central America and portions of Mexico. And that's why they want to come here. So to help fix the border issue, we need to get the federal government and their bureaucracies on board and employed, because they're underemployed and the waiting lists are too long. And that's why they try to sneak across. So that's that issue. But on the bigger issue of trying to get embracing diversity, we need to stop what the current legislature is doing. They banned last year diversity teaching. You can no longer teach diversity in public, public schools and different entities. How can we not do that? Why are we not embracing other cultures? Just to think that white is right is wrong. And we have so much to learn and so much to embrace from everyone. And we can't just think that narrow-minded. So we have to start with education. We have to start with acceptance. And I think once we really embrace that as a society, you will see violence go down. You will see mass shootings go down. You will see a lot of hate crimes go down, right? Because people fear what they don't know. And, you know, people need to travel and get out. And
how did we get to that? So that was one of the things on my to-do list to talk about today. How did we even get there where that was like, I don't understand how that bill was introduced. I don't understand how it had the votes to carry. How did we arrive at, because it sounds like a war of ideas, but the reality is that people are actually being arrested for breaking this actual law. How did we get there, and how hard is it going to be to undo that?
It's going to be very hard, and it's very scary because it starts with the misinformation campaign that's put out there. Instead of people are reading headlines, they're believing certain lines of information that say, teaching about our history is wrong, or teaching about race is wrong, and it's not wrong. Our history is our history.
Yeah.
We can learn from our history.
It's a fact.
And it is. And so we have to get past that misinformation. We have to hold people accountable. I love some of the headlines that are being in national news that people are being fined and judgments against them for promoting misinformation. We need to get to the point where if you say untruths, you're held accountable for that on some level. And I'm not saying lock people up.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But we need to publicly hold people accountable for saying misinformation. And without speaking the truth and recognizing things that we've done in our history and things that have occurred, we're just denying it, and we're promoting that do and hate. So
it is tough, right? I had this conversation the other day with somebody on my team. Like, what do you do with freedom of speech when people are using that freedom to blatantly manipulate other folks?
Well, there's a difference between freedom of speech and the freedom of the consequences of free speech.
Sure.
So I can say, somebody could say a statement, but that doesn't make them free of the consequence.
What comes next?
Right. So if they're going to say misinformation, sure, they could say that, but then they should be held accountable for that, whether it's financially, publicly, socially, whatever. They need to be held accountable for saying those mistruths. And frankly, I think I would love to see politicians actually citing, where they're getting their information. I'd like to see social figures saying, hey, I'm fact-based, not QAnon. And sorry, not Fox News.
Oh.
You need to have actual, verifiable, even peer-reviewed information would be fabulous. I mean, we can't just say, oh, well, I saw on Facebook that such and such is wrong or such and such is this. I mean, let's actually research on credible sources. And,
I kind of feel like that the introduction to a sentence I saw on Facebook can only apply if you are helping someone. Right? Like, I saw on Facebook that so-and-so's in need. I saw on Facebook that so-and-so lost their parent. I saw that's appropriate. But I feel like literally the second you step away from somebody needs help and your sentence starts with, I saw on almost any social media, unless it's being published by an independent news outlet that doesn't have an agenda.
Right.
And I think it happens both ways. I think there are scary sources of news information that are far too blue and far too red. And that we've kind of lost taste in this country. Like, the facts weren't exciting enough. And as a population, I feel like news media outlets sensed that facts were just simply unsexy, and that ratings are driven by the emotions that they create in the people, and that if more eyeballs are there, they can sell more ads.
Look at the National Enquirer. When we were young, that's where people got their sensational news, right? The National Enquirer. when you were walking or going through the grocery
Yeah.
aisle, the headline, oh, so-and-so has an alien baby or
Yes.
whatever. You know, people would
Who's
buy
getting
that
divorced?
news.
Who's
Yeah,
cheating?
they would buy that sensationalized news
Yeah.
and they'd be like, oh, look at this, you know. But now that we have, you know, 200 channels and so many social media venues, the way to get clicks is to put out fake news, untruths. And that's unfortunate. I'm not sure we're going to completely get away with that, but I think that the public eventually, and some have, a lot of people have tried to start to fact check that and said, you know what, that's not true. That can't be true. Let's look at the data and let's look at the research.
I do. As a religious person, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses has been a correct principle for a couple thousand years. And I feel like as a population, we would benefit from being able to find the same thing at 2 or 3 reputable sources. The idea of doing no research, not double checking something has gotten us in quite a bit of trouble as a country. Term limits. Are there term limits for that? Is the scariest thing you've ever said no to?
Yeah, no, not at the Iowa level and not at the federal level. I mean, look at Grassley. He's literally been in office since 1960.
Well, yeah, I think about what Strom Thurmond in the state of South Carolina, who, I mean, it was 60 some years.
Yeah.
Am I wrong that you lose the term public servant when you serve and earn a healthy living for 7 decades?
I think what happens when you're in office for so long, you might lose perspective. Now, I have met some folks that I feel their hearts are still generally in public service, but there are others who might lose sight of that because, unfortunately, without good campaign reform, people who might start in office making a certain amount of money, somehow magically they become very wealthy individuals through the political process. And that's unfortunate. And I will tell anybody who's listening and anybody who wants to hear is that I'm losing personal money in this campaign. I'm losing my personal time, my health, and my mental health. But I still feel it's important to do it. So there's no financial gain for me running but frankly, this time in our history, I cannot not run. I cannot not try to make a difference because of everything that is at stake, our democracy and all of these other issues. So some people seem to benefit and stay in office because of that benefit. I'm not going to be one of them.
Are there any incumbents that are willing to go down the road of term limits?
I don't know personally. I think term limits would be appropriate. I don't know what that magic number is.
For FDR, it was 4.
Yeah, I guess I would be willing to look at the data or look at what the best practices are and make those proposals. I think that's probably beneficial. I mean, I don't know what that magic number is, but I think it's definitely worth looking into.
Are the only way we get term limits voting out every single incumbent, or is there some scenario in which people do the right thing and vote? Because it seems a little crazy to me that the people that are in charge of that decision are the people who
would be voted out or who would be
right.
Term limit,
Am
right?
I missing?
Yeah.
Is there any other mechanism to impose term limits? Is there some way to get it on a state ballot where the people, the voters, could vote on it, and the people who we vote for just have to listen to us? Is there any way?
I believe there is. I don't know the exact mechanism to get there, but I believe there is a way to do that. I mean, heck, I'd be willing to introduce the legislation.
Please do.
This next season. I would need some assistance writing it, but
okay.
Let's go for it.
All right. So anybody who watches this, we need some help to write that legislation, because the more I talk, the more I feel like Rebecca just needs to get to work and get a lot of votes and make things different. And I thought about whether I was going to admit openly that I was going to base my vote on how this went, but it's pretty obvious that Rebecca doesn't know everything, but she is ready to get to work and she's honest. And to me, I don't know what else you need in public service is being honest and being ready to work on it. So I don't even need to talk about operating a balanced budget because the state of Iowa has such a gigantic surplus that it's really about allocation.
But
Please do.
let me jump in there. So
Please.
we do have a giant surplus right now, but because of the way the tax legislation, the tax code just came out, reform, what they're looking at doing. So when everybody gets to that same flat tax, the Revenue Estimating Committee has already estimated that a 3.8% decrease in income tax just for this next year, right? So you're going to have your income continuing to go down, but what is going up, right? Just cost of living. Even if you're not living in a high inflationary period, your inflation is going to go up. Those costs of services, your labor, and everything else that the state buys. So it's estimated within 5 years when this number is going to go like this, right? So we're not going to have enough income. We're not going to generate enough revenue in order to pay our bills. And so we need to look at making sure we continue to have funding streams to pay for mental health, medical health, our schools, and all of the other programs that we fund in order to make Iowa better. So we can't just say, oh, gee, hey, we got 1.9, billion surplus. That surplus is going to get eaten away because there's no other revenue going into it. So we need to make sure that's a priority in the next few years.
Isn't immigration a huge part of answering how do you raise the tax base?
See, now that's a complicated issue. So if you're looking at immigration as a whole, yes. We need the workers. They're going to buy the houses. They're going to invest in properties. Absolutely. Immigration, when you say immigration, people automatically think of the border and have some negative connotations. So we need to reframe that discussion.
Okay.
We need to make sure that people understand that Iowa needs workers.
Yeah.
We
of
need
any
labor.
Color.
Yes, of
any
any color,
religion.
shape, size, whatever.
Yeah.
We need people to come to this state. And we can take them from other states. We can take them from other countries. We can do whatever, but we have to make Iowa an attractive place. And that's by, number one, we have a housing shortage. We have to address the housing shortage because where are people going to live? It's estimated that Iowa is short 40,000 homes. So we need at least that, if not
in the whole
more.
state?
Well, and I think maybe it's regional. That's the number. It's in my book over
There's
there.
a lot of homes for sale on the way over here.
There is, but look at the market.
Okay.
Look at the homes that are for sale. Look at the different income, the price breaks, the price brackets. The housing market is not as robust as it was 10 to 15 years ago. Now I recognize there was other issues 10 to 15 years ago, but we're facing a housing shortage. Ask any economic development official in this area, and they're going to tell you the same thing. If you have 1,000 people that came to Fort Madison, Lee County right now,
I don't think we have 1,000.
You couldn't find.
Yeah, I don't think
you couldn't find decent housing for them. There's a lot of places for sale.
Not 1,000.
But maybe not even that are livable.
But
reasonably livable.
But doesn't that, if we solve that, so for instance, there's a huge amount of unoccupied real estate in Fort Madison.
I don't know about huge amount, but there is some. Yeah.
Yeah. Dozens of houses where trees are growing out of the roof. Right.
But that takes money, and not everybody has. When I purchased this building in 2008, it literally had a tree growing out of apartment 4. Literally had a tree.
So you get it.
I get it. I've built 4 apartments. I've, replaced the roof. I put solar. I've remodeled things. The bank loves me. It is not a cheap venture. And
Sure.
And not everybody can afford to come to and say, oh, hey, I'm going to tackle this restoration project. So we need housing that people can move into, that is good to live in, that is decent, that is clean, that is, well.
And you're saying there's no way to imagine the property values in Fort Madison if all of the blighted properties were restored and occupied.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love that. But not everybody's capable of tackling those projects. Not everybody has the financial resources. There are people who do, and we love that. Thank you for doing that. There's a lot of people I know. Barbicide, she has done a lot of those properties.
For sure.
But if you're just moving into town, not everybody has that resource.
But what can we do? That, I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Credits and grants and incentives and help with the labor. I mean, it can be.
Oh, that's the biggest expense.
Yeah.
Yeah. The materials are a joke compared to the labor.
Not recently, but yes, I agree.
Oh, sure. True.
Generally.
Right.
Yeah. So usually you can do, 50% labor, 50% expenses for your projects, but there's some incentives that I think that we could put out there, but we have to be realistic, and people need to invest in the community, remodel these projects like some of the developers are in Fort Madison, then they turn around and sell them. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's tough. I'd like to envision a world in which the rich don't just get richer, because that is at 43, I have arrived at that has been happening in our country, because as you point out, who has the resources to do X, Y, Z? I would like to think that if there is 1 point whatever billion, that the average like blighted property in Fort Madison, say, is like $27,000. That's a lot of zeros on a billion. I think if I just let's just say we allocate 10 million of the billion, divided by 27, it's 370 homes that could be purchased. That's a lot of. I have to think that there's a way to do both, and that if you teach a man to fish, he will fish for the rest of his life, right? If you feed a man a fish for a day, he will eat for that day. But if you teach a man to fish, he will fish for the rest of his life. That there has to be some sort of, the government only can be the answer for so long, and then at some point, as a population, as a people, we have to move far enough forward that we don't need all of these extraordinary social programs.
Sure. And some communities have been very creative with different programs. There was one program I saw online that had women, and they were teaching women on how to do different skills. I do my own tile work. I've laid my own flooring. I can do all of these different things, but I didn't start out knowing that.
Yeah.
It took me, I had to learn it, and I learned it through various people and watching things and trial and error, and don't look too closely at my grout work here, but if we provided the venue and the opportunity to teach people, to say, hey, don't be afraid to tackle this project. You can do it too. And maybe help provide some resources. So I don't know exactly how that would look, but I think that is something that could be started at a grassroots level here in Southeast Iowa, because Fort Madison and Keokuk both have some really cool places.
Yeah.
Really
historic.
Cool places. Yeah. Historic, that have some good features.
Yep.
They just need somebody brave enough to say, hey, I can do some of this work myself and save myself some money.
Yes.
And so, that's something to always look at and work at, and, have those conversations.
I think you've said it many times, and I'm starting to feel like it's a boring answer, but man, it's the answer to everything, is attacking misinformation or lack of information. And that at the root of all of these problems is, sure, lack of access to capital is one part of it, but as you said, the money's out there. We can solve that problem. The thing that we can't solve is, how do we bring everybody up to speed? How do we get everyone on the same page? I feel like there's some fatigue from some of the political spectrum of another government program. And we've just gone through seeing the world blow up. When Ford is trading under $1 a share, when Bank of America is trading under $1 a share, and we've clawed back from that, only to then lock everybody up in their homes for 2 years. And as we're returning to the world, we're now facing late 80s it's inflation, where mortgage rates went from 3% to now we're above 6%. The real estate agents I've talked to have said people are absolutely walking away from the housing market because of the interest rates that we're seing right now.
But is that always a bad thing? So the reason that the interest rates were raised is
it
to
has
slow
to be.
down the housing market. We were watching pricing in Florida housing, and 2 years ago, houses were selling for $200,000. They're now selling for $500,000. I get it. I know people want to. They want to sell their property for as much money. We're in a capitalist economy. I get it. But on the other side of it, it didn't really increase in value that. And so I understand the Fed's motivation
100%.
by slowing down stuff. And that's why the whole purpose of raising rates. I get it. Nobody wants to pay those extra rates. But if you had a fixed rate, the majority of the country are on fixed rate mortgages already. So their adjustable rates won't be as, only people at the adjustable rates will be affected. And that's unfortunate. But it will not cause the same effect that the 2008 housing crash did, because people were on adjustable rates.
True.
So that will go back down. Inflation, if you look at the history of inflation, it does this number, right? So just like gas prices. I remember, gas prices being a lot higher years ago. And so it goes up and down. People just need to say that, and I don't know exactly when we're stopping this, but I do want to make a closing statement that inflation, gas prices, those are going to fluctuate. They're always going to fluctuate, and they have under both Democratic and Republican leadership. That is what it is. It's a market economy. Supply demand drives that stuff. But some of the decisions that our Iowans are facing now, we cannot change our minds later. It'll be that much more difficult later. So we need to make sure that we're making the right choices. Like you said, do your research, make sure that we're not just voting straight ticket because we think. Do your research on the candidates. Look at what your belief systems are and the direction you want Iowa to go, because November 8th will be a determining factor on the direction we take. And I really hope that everybody votes November 8th and you get out early, get to the polls early.
At 933 Avenue H, vote early.
Yes. So I don't know if you had any closing statements, Brad, or any final thoughts.
I would love to see people vote for the person and not the color. And again, I really mean red or blue. It obviously plays in terms of skin color as well, but I am kind of over people. I asked around if people knew any of the people running, and I literally meant like, can you tell me about this person as a person? And I was told who's a Republican, who's a Democrat, and that did not help me even a little bit with my vote. And so I want to see a world in which people can vote based on research.
Red and blue makes purple. Let's vote on the person.
And I appreciate you saying that the absolute last thing people should do is vote on gas prices or interest rates, because those things are going to be determined based on the factors that exist. What traders are paying for a barrel of oil is going to determine gas prices, and whether the economy is on fire or ice cold, as interest rates are going to be reflected. I really appreciate all your time.
And I appreciate you coming. I think this has been great.
Absolutely. Please reach out. You have a Facebook page, correct?
Yes, Rebecca Bowker for Iowa. My phone number is 319-371-7753.
Here we go. That's worth putting on the screen.
319-371-7753. I do have a day job, so after 2:00 is better. They don't like me taking those calls during the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, give me a call, text me. You can find my email address on Facebook. Just reach out. Happy to talk to you. I look forward to representing you guys in Des Moines.
There we go. Please send your questions, comments, or concerns in a text message. Everybody be an adult. This is not an opportunity to say mean, crude, lewd, or otherwise reckless comments. This is a person who's invited us. into their home, given an hour and a half of Rebecca's time to talk about things that are important in the political process and in Iowa specific. I can't say thank you enough. It is my prayer that everybody gets out and votes. A lot of people died for that right for us to be free. Please make your voice heard. We're going to need some help writing legislation. I would really love to see this go in a positive direction, and I'm grateful that we ended up in Iowa. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you. All right.
We'll see you November 8th if you have to wait that long, but please, if you don't mind, go in and get that out of the way at 933 Avenue H from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. So if you have to be at work at 9, be there when they open up the doors at 8:30 and make sure you get that done.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody,
Bye, guys.
for joining in, and we will see you at the polls.